Does your form suck? Well, stick around, let's fix it. What is up? It's your boy Johnny Shreve, IFBB Pro Mr. Tell Like It Is. Welcome back to the channel. We're here again at the Blue Star Nutraceuticals headquarters, and today we're gonna fix your squat. And I need to warm up because my shoulder hurts because of past mistakes ego lifting. And that's why today we're gonna fix your form. And why is that important? Well, if you injure yourself, there's a halt to your goals. You're out 6 weeks to probably 8 months, and then you lose your goals. And we want to avoid that. Our squat. Now, let's make things very clear. A squat is just a movement pattern. A squat could be a front squat, a back squat, a hack squat, a goblet squat, bodyweight squat. My recommendation is make sure we can actually do a bodyweight squat before we're loading any type of weight. So again, if you can't do a bodyweight squat, we shouldn't be loading our spine or loading weight, period. So let's just start from just doing a bodyweight squat. And what I like to do is starting from a bodyweight squat and then going to a goblet squat. And that's gonna give you a good base understanding of how to get in the right positioning, have better body positioning, body posture, and then we can go into a back squat. So let's just talk about common mistakes that happen first. Now, when we're talking about squatting, there's a few things that are gonna determine whether or not you are a good squatter. Everybody's body's a lot different. So depending on your shin bone length, your thigh bone length, and your torso length is gonna determine what kind of squatter you are. So for the most part, if you have, say, you have a short shin bone and like a really long thigh bone and very short torso, you might be one of those squatters that end up doing this. Or say you have the opposite. You might be one of those squatters that do a lot of this and sit back. So a couple of things we can do to avoid some mistakes and to basically put ourselves at equal level. A couple of tools you can use. Number one, if you have a problem with getting full range of motion getting down, I suggest using something like a wedge, or if you have squat shoes, or maybe you have like a 5-pound plate that you can put under your heels. What that's gonna do is gonna lengthen the shin bone length. So for the most part, when people squat, a couple of issues that happen is when we squat, sometimes we squat down, then we have our feet come off the ground, our heels come off. Or we only can get this far because we can't get that proper knee over toe. We want to be able to achieve squatting getting all the way down and all the way up. We wanna make sure that our hips and knees break at the same time and our entire foot is planted on the ground. And then we also want to avoid what we call knee valgus, or the buckling of the knee. So you've probably seen this happen before. Someone squats and then on the way up, their knees cave in like that. So we're gonna fix everything from the ground up, from floor to core. Number one, how far away should our feet be? Well, let's think a little outside shoulder width apart. Your feet positioning is gonna be based on your mobility, naturally. So we don't want to be super wide, we also don't want to be super narrow. So what you can think about is, we're looking at outside shoulder width apart being the inside of the heel being outside shoulder width apart. If we just think shoulder width apart, this is shoulder width apart, and for me, that's very narrow. So if I'm aiming between the outside of my feet as shoulder width apart, that's going to make it very hard for me to squat. So think about outside shoulder width apart being the insides of your feet being outside shoulder width apart. That is a lot more comfortable for me. Now, when it comes to where our feet should they be straight? Should they be flared out? Well, a good rule of thumb is think about the middle of your body, your crotch being 12 o'clock. And then you're on a clock, and then you have 12 o'clock, and then your left foot's gonna be around 11 o'clock. And then your right foot's going to be around 1 o'clock. Why we do this? Well, we want to also make sure that our knees stay aligned with our toes. So we're going to pretend that there is a piece of paper on the ground, and we're going to rip that paper. What that does is it aligns our knees with our toes. So we're going to try and rip that piece of paper open, and then as soon as our knees are aligned with our toes, then we're going to stop. We don't want to continue, so our feet end up doing this. That's another common mistake that happens. We over externally rotate, and then we end up squatting down and going over the outsides of our feet. So use that cue as pretending you're trying to rip a piece of paper open with your feet to make sure your knees align with your toes. So now that we're there, from here we want to make sure that our core is tight. And we still do want to push the butt out a little bit. We don't have to be excessively this way, but what I want to do is I want to open my hips up a little bit and tilt my hips, my pelvis a bit, but then I want to engage my core as well too. I want to avoid things I did in the past. You see my back, I have this extensive curve, duck butt, so to speak, or lordotic curve is extremely bent like this. I used to squat like this, and then I wouldn't engage my core, and then doing so puts a ton of pressure on your lower back. You gotta think, we're getting pressure from gravity from coming up, and then pushing you from the floor, coming from the floor. So you're getting compressed like this. So if we don't engage our core, our poor little spine, our lumbar spine is getting all of that pressure. So when we engage our core, and some of you guys try this, put your hand on your stomach, put your hand on your back, and just cough. Or just say push or pull. You'll feel that your core, your abs will flex, and so your erectors. You want to keep that engaged, so that's going to protect the lower back. So again, feet outside shoulders apart, aiming from the inside of your foot. Feet around 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock. Pretend we're ripping a piece of paper open with our feet until our knees are aligned with our toes. Slight pelvic tilt, engaging our core, and then chest is going to be up. Now from here, we're going to make sure our hips and knees break at the same time. And what I mean is, I want to make sure that when I squat, I don't do a common mistake, which is 1, then 2, or 1, then 2. We want to make sure they break at the same time. So my hips and my knees are going to go the opposite direction at the same time. They're going to break at the same time. And back up. Now, if that's hard for you to do and you find that your heels are coming off the ground, that's when we apply something like a wedge. What the wedge is going to do, again, it's going to pretend like it's going to lengthen the length of your shin bone. That's why we do this. So then when I do squat, you can see the difference in how much knee over toe I'm going to get. And knee over toe is a good thing. So on the way down, I can get myself all the way down with a good healthy amount of knee over toe. Now, when we're coming back up, we're still trying to rip the piece of paper with our feet because we want to make sure that on the way up, we don't have your knees caving in like this. So we're conscious of squatting and making sure our knees stay over our toes the entire time, going down and then coming up. Now, depth. You might not be able to get all the way down right now. You eventually will. You'll be able to get down a little lower the more you do it, the more your body gets used to the load. So if you're getting only to here, that's fine. Eventually, you're gonna get lower and lower and lower. What we wanna do is get to this point because then our body's gonna get strong within the full range of motion. You see a lot of times people squat, and they're only squatting to this range, and the second you tell them to go a little lower, they can't because their body isn't strong enough to go through that full range of motion. So what I recommend is starting off with body weight. And then once you're comfortable with body weight, then we move to a goblet squat. What I like doing with athletes who are first starting in, and to load them first, is in a goblet squat position. What this is gonna do is, it's going to help strengthen your torso. This part of our body is what fails most of the time we're squatting. We start loading the spine, and then all of a sudden we get up and our back starts doing this. It does that because we're not strong enough here yet. So what we wanna do is grab a dumbbell or a kettlebell, get your hands underneath, tuck your elbows in close, and then let your shoulders relax. And then we're gonna keep that nice and flat, and then we're gonna squat. What this does is it kind of works as a counterbalance to keep us upright. And then when we're squatting and we're conscious of our core, our torso, erectors, abs, chest, everything is getting stronger within this full range of motion. I recommend starting off here first before we head into the squat rack and lower our spine. Let's go to the squat rack now. Now, a couple of things. It's very important that we make sure the rack is at a position that we're not on our tippy toes trying to take it off, and we're not doing a full squat trying to take it off. So a little rule of thumb is set the rack about shoulder height. So when we get underneath it, it's at a good positioning, and it's right a little bit below our traps, but right on top of our rear delts. We don't have to go super low, We also don't want it to be on our traps, because at this point, it's gonna be really uncomfortable, and the heavier you go, you're not gonna be able to sustain a nice neutral spine, because again, when it comes to gravity, it's gonna make you do this. And you wanna avoid having your neck jammed up like this. So I'm gonna use the wedge. Again, I'm gonna get under the bar, squat up, step back to my wedge. Then I'm gonna position my feet. Again, shoulders apart, feet 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, pretending I'm ripping a piece of paper open with my feet to make sure my knees align with my toes. A little bit of a pelvic tilt, engaging my core, chest up, and then squatting all the way down and all the way up. Squatting all the way down and all the way up. Now, for me, I need to use a little bit more weight to help get me in that full range of motion. That's completely fine. As long as we're warming up long enough to get our body within that full range of motion, then we're fine. When we're getting into this position, make sure you are warm. Don't just jump into the squat rack or even doing bodyweight squats cold. Make sure you warm up completely so when you're starting to squat, you can actually get within full range of motion and be completely fine. Go to the ego. Take the time to learn proper form. Remember, you want to load on dysfunction. The healthier we can be, the longer we can continue to make those gains. If you injure yourself, you're no good to anybody. That's what my coach used to say, basically. If I cannot play, then I'm no good to playing. If I cannot lift, then I cannot get to my goals. So take the time to learn proper form. So make sure you guys like, subscribe, and share. And you guys know what it is. Iron sharpens iron, progressive overload your life. In the meantime, keep gym chasing. Peace.